Live from San Diego, this is KUSI News.
After weeks of testimony, both the prosecution and defense rested its cases in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Deliberations could start as soon as Friday. Here now to break it down is criminal defense attorney Vikas Bajaj. Vic, welcome back to KUSI.
My pleasure. Thank you, Paul.
All right, 32 days. Is that what you expected in the way of length of a trial?
You know, the prosecution at the outset of the case, Paul, indicated about 6 weeks. That's more or less where we are right now. But in a RICO case, you can actually expect it to go sometimes for months. So as far as RICO cases, this is truncated and quite a simple one. One comparison would be in Atlanta, Georgia, in Fulton County, when one rapper and a few alleged gang members were charged with an extraordinary RICO allegation. That took over a year to present all of the evidence. And that's really part and parcel and testament to the fact that a RICO case is not just a conspiracy. It's an elevated conspiracy with a lot of organization. Some people say the jurors might look at this case and say, you proved individual acts, but that sort of severity with the organization is lackluster in this case.
I think the decision everybody was waiting to see is whether or not Diddy would be on the stand. The decision not to testify means?
There's no way he would have testified in this case. That was just a false hope by people who were thinking that may be a possibility. And I'll tell you why, Paul. As a defense attorney, you understand that the government can go to the grand jury to ask for charges in a federal case to be issued. It doesn't take much. As we always say, you can indict a ham sandwich, right? And there's a reason why that saying has so much force and effect. But there are also other charges that were not presented to the grand jury. And this does not mean that that type of conduct cannot be fodder for cross-examination. So when you have a client, a defendant, who's facing a conspiracy or a RICO charge or trafficking or you name the crime, the fear is not that the individual will have an opportunity to explain the crimes that he or she is charged with, but rather explaining other relevant conduct. And sometimes that other conduct is more forceful to a jury than are the actual pieces of evidence for the charges.
Have you ever had a client, though, that is so dialed in, that understands the minefield so well that they can testify even though it's in their best interest not to?
Absolutely, yes. And I will tell you, in the interest of full disclosure, I like to call my clients to testify. I am a firm believer that jurors look at facts, they look at evidence, but the most important piece of evidence is the accused. And even though there's a right to remain silent and proof beyond a reasonable doubt and all of these great things that we are learning are important in the world of criminal justice in our fine union, you know, when somebody is in handcuffs and they're on the wall and somebody's driving by, they don't say, hey, you know what, I believe in that presumption of innocence. He or she probably didn't do anything wrong. They ask, what did he or she do? And the same way, when a person is sitting at the defendant's table, people ask, what did he or she do? And I really expect them to speak up for themselves.
When this all started to break open some weeks, months ago, everybody expected there to be the star-studded A-list names, you know, just like the Epstein deal, where everyone thought, oh boy, all these big names are going to be dragged in through the mud. And just like Epstein, it didn't seem to happen. Or am I wrong about that?
You're not wrong about that in this case, but the question is why? Sometimes there's a relevance argument and the judge says, you know what, I just don't find that to be relevant. In this case, prosecution, Department of Justice. The real import of these witnesses or names would be these were people that were used to gain more influence by Sean Combs over other people. There may also be Fifth Amendment rights. There may be other rights where those witnesses said, I'm not testifying, and the judge did not force their hand. So unless you're part of that legal wrangling, those pretrial motions in limine, we don't know why they weren't called, but we know why the Department of Justice may have wanted to call them.
All right, this is kind of an off-the-wall question, so slap me down if necessary. It seemed when this all started, it was going to be a front burner, front story in the newscast story for months, weeks. But then international events and the rioting in Los Angeles, it seems like it's been pushed back to page 2, page 3. Does that help Diddy at all?
I don't think so. It doesn't help or hurt. You know, I'm not surprised from your capacity, right? As a person who follows the news and has your finger on the pulse of world headlines all the time, how it could be a minor distraction. But that jury is given instructions to have laser-like focus. They are there every single day focusing on one case. Now, they can't insulate themselves from social media and the world's happenings, but I don't think it's going to have an effect on their...
Well, they're not even supposed to look at the news, right? I mean, they're not sequestered per se, but they're at home. They're not supposed to watch TV. They're not. How is that even a possible instruction?
Usually the jury instruction is not to look at news or anything regarding this particular case, but not to isolate yourself completely. There are some situations where a judge will say you're physically sequestered and legally sequestered. Turn off all of your notifications and your social media. That's not the case in Sean Combs's case, and not the least of which is probably because it's a factual impossibility to live without your smartphone.
All right, we're out of time. How's this going to play out?
We'll see. You know, you have to be, it's hard to be a fly on the wall and reach a decision, but I'll tell you, it depends on what that defense team is going to encourage that jury to put on. A set of lenses of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, or a set of lenses of find the crime.
Has he hid his assets so that he's not going to end up losing everything?
That's a personal decision that only his financial advisors probably know.
All right. We'll be right back with, thanks, Vic, but we'll continue. That's where my next question will be. We'll be right back with more Good Morning San Diego.